Welcome to There to Hear, an educational podcast where industry professionals talk nuts and bolts and how they got from there to here. As this is a new podcast, we're really wanting feedback, so go to media.collabinc.org and fill out the feedback survey, and you will be entered to win a $25 Amazon gift card. I'm Tanya Musgrave, creative director here at Collab Inc., and today I have Maranatha, Leif Ramsey, and Bryan Fellows with us. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now,
Thank you for having us, Tanya.
Now, the one thing that you all have in common is that you all own production companies. You are non-union, small businesses. Like the last few guests that I have interviewed, they have been part of the union or part of a guild. And so I really wanted to get a raw and honest look at what our non-union small businesses were looking like. Maranatha, you have Tower Films, you're based in SoCal. Leif, you have Pathfinder Films, you're based in Chattanooga in Tennessee. And Bryan, you are a freelance producer and you're based right out of Chicago and you serve the Michigan area. So how are you guys faring? Go ahead and expand. And what's your work consisted of leading up to COVID? How about we start there?
So for the last 3 years, I've been on a bigger project. It was a feature documentary that was in 360. So I was working on that, editing that. That was like kind of the big project that I was working on. Prior to that, I had a small production company, still do, called Tower Films, and it did like branded content, commercial work, just mostly really small projects. A lot of them were like kind of feel good lifestyle, positive vibes kind of stuff. And after I completed the VR project, I picked my business back up in January. And I was starting to get like build up my client portfolio up again. And it was like one day, March, I think 11th. And I know I was kind of late to the game, but it was just like, oh, it's not going to be a big deal. Production was happening on all of these different projects. Like clients were coming in. And then all of a sudden it was like, it came to an absolute screeching halt, like all of a sudden. It was just like, boom. And I remember because I was editing for a client and they were like, we have to get this done now. And then that week, it was just like a rush to finish everything. And then it was like flying over the edge of a cliff. And like projects have come in like because people are transitioning their businesses. And so they're looking for marketing and there's still a need for that. Education, UC, University of California is one of my clients. And so they wanted to move all of their stuff over online. And so there are needs for that. And so you can meet that with like things like stock footage or like kind of like reverse engineering. But as far as like production, nothing.
So cutting entire commercials using just stock footage.
I mean, doing whatever you can. Like I've had people come through the woodwork, like from like clients from 4 years ago being like, do you still have XYZ on that hard drive? Can we re-edit this for this project? Because we really need this content, but like nobody can shoot. Mm-hmm. So it's just been a very, very, very weird couple of months for sure.
Yeah. So prior to COVID, I was producing a lot of commercials, working on a lot of commercials. So extremely busy season all the way through summer, fall, winter of last year, even into January was just slammed, which is great. So probably the best year I've ever had was last year. And I was really thankful for that leading into this, unbeknownst to me, this was going to happen. But I would say, I think it was mid-January, I had a couple international projects happening in Asia. Had tickets bought, had everything ready to go. And then I started hearing from my local contacts there about what was going on. Way more news than, we were really hearing here in the States. And so we made the decision to go ahead and postpone. And I wasn't sure if that would, head our way or not, but obviously it has. And so mid-March, early March actually was the last project that I did, and that's been it. So it's been a pretty dry season since then.
Yeah. So the question was, what were we working on leading up to COVID?
Yeah.
So the last thing that we did was actually 2 30-second spots for the largest Honda power sports dealer in the U.S. And it was power sports is like more like the off-road side of the industry and motorcycles and like things like that. So we actually did a spot for Honda Talon, which is one of their like hot like off-road vehicles, and another for a Honda Pioneer. And we shot those on like, I want to say like March 6th or something like that. And we kind of like saw stuff coming and we're kind of like, wow, we need to get this production done. But then things didn't really shut down for us in Tennessee until just right after that, like maybe like a week after that. In fact, they were going to play the spots locally before they used them digitally. And they were going to use them with like the kickoff of Chattanooga Football Club, which is a soccer club actually. So a little play on words there. But the season opening game was supposed to be that next weekend. And that game got canceled like a day ahead of time, and like everything just like kind of shut down at that point. So that was like the very last thing that we did. Before that, we were doing a decent amount of like post-production for the Navy. This is like going back to like just before Christmas, New Year's. And we were also shooting a short doc about Russian art over like the Christmas, New Year's time period. So yeah, that's kind of what we were up to.
Nice. So how has this affected your business? How are you guys holding up? How has coronavirus kind of affected everything?
I'll just continue on. It's interesting. Things kind of went in phases for us. The first phase was we were still getting a lot of people. Like I think we've worked on like 3 different pitches over the early part of kind of that, like the first 2 weeks of March. And people were still like, oh yeah, like we think production's going to happen like mid-April. We think production's going to happen like beginning of May, like those kind of timelines. And then as this has progressed, like as it's gone on for multiple weeks, everybody's just sort of dropped off. I mean, sort of goes without saying that we haven't shot anything, but like not only that, like even the people that were like, hey, we want to put together a production for April, they're kind of like, we don't know. And then also budgets have changed. The production that we were in talks with, and the agency had awarded the project to us, was supposed to be 5 days of shooting. And like one of the first things that they did was scale back and say like, budgets have changed. We need to make this a 3-day production. And then now it's been probably 2 weeks since we've heard from them. And like the last thing that we heard is like, I don't know, we'll get back in touch when we know more. And like when we figure out like, you know, when we can shoot again type of a deal. Yeah. So that's kind of the general trend.
Yeah. Piggybacking off that, I had, you know, some tentative projects scheduled as well. We were working on a pitch and development on a project for early April that, just like, you know, Leif was saying, as March went along, we went into postponement of that, and the dialogue between us and the client has kind of drifted into nothing, as it lingers in in the air somewhere until, you know, all this gets cleared up. So yeah, a lot of pretty much everything's on standstill right now. There's nothing going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's like somebody just pressed a giant pause button, and you're just kind of like in this homeostasis period where, you know, you're hoping that the bottom won't fall out, but what's going to happen when everybody presses play again? There's just no way of knowing, no way of telling. Like with the commercial projects that I was working on, it's like a really similar experience to what Leif and Bryan are talking about, where I think clients also, they don't know what they want, and they don't know what they want to make as well. Like, do you reference this crisis? Like, what do people want to see? Is it appropriate to kind of like hawk your wares in the middle of all of this?
Being sensitive.
Yeah. Like I had a client that does stuff like makes stuff for golf courses, and who's going golfing? Like, I mean, that's the big question, is like, who's buying anything right now? Like, do people have money to buy? Like, what are we going into, you know? And then I guess on another note, with the documentary that I was working on, you know, the premiere was at a festival in October, and we were supposed to have our yearly run, where a lot of these film festivals, you only have like a year from the time that you premiere. So, I mean, we spent thousands of dollars like submitting to all of these different film festivals. And then like, I'll never forget the day that South by Southwest like all of the corporate sponsors started pulling out, and then it was like, oh, this is real. Like this is going to happen. This is going to be crazy. This is big. And then every single one of the film festivals after that, it was just like a tower collapsing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the ones that we had submitted to, you know, we just kept getting letter after letter after letter that was like, sorry, we're not having it this year. Sorry, we don't know what to do. I mean, a year's worth of work trying to figure out how to convert this into a dome space from VR where people like could experience it communally. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know what to think about all of that time that I put into that project. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. So how has this actually changed your day-to-day, all of your day-to-day dealings? Are you working on post work for some of these projects? Where are you kind of spending your time in order to sustain your business?
I've caught up on a lot of television.
Yep.
So I don't know. It's a mixed bag. There are some days where I feel like being more productive than others, and I think that's okay. I don't think that's bad necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been some definite binge watching, which I don't think is necessarily bad, but probably not helping my my trying to lose a little bit of extra pounds, you know.
But I think it's fair to mention that it is okay, you know, that this is one specific reason why we're getting other people's opinions, is to let people know that there is a variety of different reactions out there, and all of them are okay, you know.
Right. Yeah. I've spent quite a bit of time on the back end of some projects that I just, you know, it's been something that I've needed to get done for a long time and have it. One of those is my own personal website, my own personal portfolio. It's one of those things where you always tell yourself you're going to do it, and you just never have time because you're doing the projects that, you know, you're paid to do. So that's been really awesome to see that actually getting somewhere. So I spent a lot of time on that, and also working on pitches. Which is fun in theory, but I always question also, you know, are those pitches actually going to see the light of day after this? You know, where do they go? What space do they fit into after this? So those are questions that I'm trying to tackle. And then lastly, some filmmaker friends and I have gotten together and had a Google Doc that we've all kind of collaborated on and still working on, trying to come up with some personal procedures and plans for what sets are going to look like after this, and how to put those practices in place so that when, you know, agencies and clients start coming to us after this at some point, that we have an answer and we have something that hopefully will set us apart and help us, you know, jump back into work faster than others maybe.
Mm-hmm. I think for about 4 weeks after everything sort of shut down, there was a lot of momentum for us because we just had a backlog of like a laundry list of things that we wanted to do. And so, like, similar to Bryan, you know, we launched a new website and built that out like over the course of like 2-3 weeks, which we hadn't done since we started the business. Like, our website was like 5 years old, which, like, in internet terms, I feel like is more like 5 decades. So we did that, and that was like kind of a big push. We did a decent amount of like re-editing of work that we already had that we wanted to format in a different way to make it more appealing for like 30 and 60-second spots. And I think the biggest changes that happened like in daily routine were not super significant for myself or Lucky. So my wife and I work together in our business. And so for us, we could still come into the office, but normally we have 4 people in the office, and everybody else basically had to start working from home. So it was all this like kind of work remote thing versus like seeing everyone every day.
Yeah. And Leif, you actually had a student worker, didn't you?
Yeah. So like that person is also remote. And so that's kind of been interesting. But like, I think at this point, the momentum has died off, and it's basically just me still doing some editing because that's a skill set I can fall back to. It's not my first preference to be editing stuff, but I can do it, so I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And really for the rest of us, we're not doing much, you know, like the rest of our core team isn't really doing anything anymore, which we were for those first like maybe 4 weeks after we shut down. But we've like finished the laundry list. I think Lucky came in for a few hours yesterday and was like literally just answering every email, which we get a lot of like random emails from people that are like, do you need voiceover work? Like, do you need, you know, whatever, like motion design work, like that type of stuff. Lucky was like literally just answering them because she could. And it was like, I might as well like see what these people are up to, see what their life is like more just like conversation than actual work. But I mean, that's cool. I mean, maybe that'll come back and be valuable at some point. So.
Yeah. So Leif, just real quick, your company is set up to work some government gigs since you've done some work with the U.S. Navy. Has that outlook changed at all? Like, does that kind of bring some possibilities into the future on the horizon, or are they kind of in the same boat?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, they got in touch with us, I would say a couple of weeks in, and basically said, hey, we're not going to be doing any production. You know, like out on ships or on bases for a long time. We don't know exactly when that is, but it's going to be a long time. And we were kind of like, okay, sure, that makes sense. And then they wanted to do some post-production. We haven't started doing post-production for them yet. So that's also been a longer timeline than we anticipated, even to do the next round of post stuff. I'm not sure. I mean, everybody's life is complex. You know, everybody's like kind of like trying to figure out what it means to work from home. Like the folks that we work with directly are on the agency side, and they had, you know, an office of 80 people, and now those 80 people are distributed all over to their homes and stuff, and things like paperwork and contracts and all kinds of stuff has slowed down. Like, even if they want to do stuff, it's just not as fast. So yeah. I mean, I guess the short answer is we can do some post work and that'll help us tread water, but like production is where we actually sustain ourselves. So
Gotcha.
So to what they were saying, like pretty much the only thing that I can really do right now is work, you know, remotely. I do work from home. So, you know, on a day-to-day, I do a lot of editing work. But like I said, I've been, you know, one of the first things I started to do was just contact all of the clients and be like, hey, you know, I can't do anything with production right now, but what I can do is, you know, use stock footage, pre-existing material, and like narration. And then quickly put together like a 30-minute sample of what that could be like. And I just started sending it out. So my day to day has been a ton of production coordination with all of these remote assets and then throwing them all together with editing. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. It'd be
a little interesting to see kind of some sort of integration into the animation sphere, you know, kind of those whiteboard type of explainer videos. The only reason I say that is because the previous person that I had talked to, she was a writer with WGA, and she was talking about how she's keeping her eye on the animation sphere because their work is exactly the same. You know, Robin up in Vancouver, you know, with Sony, he took his computer from work and now does the exact same thing at home. So I don't know.
There are some things that have stayed the same, and it helps to it's helped for me to take a step back and see like, okay, explainer videos, those are kind of going to be the same, like subcontracting out to an animator and then have them doing it, and then maybe you subcontract with the VO artist voices.com you know, and piecing that together. If you have editing skills, you can like throw that together. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I don't know what to do about like the production piece. You know, I don't know when all of that is going to come together. I don't see me doing any kind of production for like September. I think that's how long it's going to take to get everything together, which is months later. What I did do right away was file for the SBA loan. As a contractor or independent contractor, you can do that. Did not receive it. I heard that was restaurant chains. So I know they passed another $450 billion one today, I think. Hopefully that does actually go to small businesses. But I think for the next 3-4 months, it's going to be incredibly dry. And if I don't figure out this puzzle, I don't know how I can live in my house and have money and, you know, exist. Like, I think figuring out that piece of the puzzle is going to be very, very important.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about that because usually I'd be asking the guests like, hey, do you know any sources of help for industry people in your particular boat? You know, those who have a production company or work as a sole proprietor, that kind of thing. With the revelation of PPP and the SBA loans, I'm actually curious at each of your inputs on like how that's worked for each of you, because I know of a personal friend who has it's a froyo shop, and he was asking for a paltry $15K as opposed to a larger entity that I know of that got over $1 million that didn't necessarily need it as desperately as he did. So I'm very curious how that's worked out for each one of you.
It hasn't worked out. So I'm not speaking for everybody on the call, and maybe it's worked out for the rest of you, but I applied for both the EIDL, which is the economic, I don't know, I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's basically the $10,000 grant that you could get like on a one-time basis. I did that back in, let's see here, like somewhere like around 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And finally got an email from the SBA. It was basically like a form email about a week ago that said, we're changing the terms from a $10,000 one-time grant for small businesses to $1,000 per employee. So in our case, there's 4 partners in the business, and everybody else is contractors. And so for us, that would mean $4K if that came through. But will that come through? Who knows? I know one person that's got it thus far, like in my network. And for them, the money just magically appeared in their bank account one day. And then they got an email about it like a couple days later explaining that the money had arrived. And for the PPP, I applied for that back on April 2, I believe it was. Like literally 2 days before banks could start releasing it, and was in contact with my bank multiple times, like over those 2 days. And they were like, I talked to them the day before the PPP loans were supposed to be starting to be approved by the SBA and issued. And they said, well, we actually haven't received any additional instructions from the SBA on how we're supposed to complete these loans. And that was like 12 hours before like things were supposed to take off. And I've talked to them since then, and like we never received any PPP. I don't think our actual PPP application made it from the bank to the SBA in the last round. And the last conversation I had with them was probably 4 or 5 days ago, and they said, don't worry, like we'll get it in first thing on the next round, like when it gets funded. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll be calling you like every day as soon as that legislation passes, because otherwise I don't think I'm going to be at the front of the line, you know?
No.
So
when my friend got there, they were already out.
That's kind of the experience.
It was gone. So, I mean,
I haven't even seen like the personal stimulus check thing or whatever. And I'm signed up for electronic deposit. So thus far 0. And I have 0 expectations.
Wow, that is actually something that did come through for me personally.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was the only thing that I had actually heard of, and the PPP and the SBA were things. I mean, I must have been living under a rock because I didn't hear about them until way later in the game, when it was basically already done and gone.
Yeah, I don't have any friends in my network that have received it. And I honestly did not apply. I didn't think that it would actually happen, even if I did. That was first thing. Second of all, I did have a really good year last year and do have some put away. And I knew that there was plenty of other people who, below the line that don't have those opportunities that need the money. And so I would rather let those people have access to it if it actually is going to come out and they're actually going to be able to get it. At some point, I may change my tune, depending on how long this lasts. But that's currently where my thought process has been.
I hadn't even heard of it. That's the thing. I don't know where they were, because Maranatha, I feel like we had talked about this a bit too, where it was just a foundation that you had heard through the grapevine about it.
Yeah. It was actually through one of my clients. She was like, she texted me at like 10:30 at night, and she was like, are you doing this tomorrow? It's opening up. and I didn't know what it was. And she was like, look at this video now. And it was like this guy like on YouTube that was like showing people how to fill it out if you were a small business owner. It had, I think, 1.2 million hits when I watched it. So people were watching that video. It was just like a janky, like 1 minute video of how to do it real quick. And then the next day was when everything opened. And she was like, you better do this quick because I think it's first come, first serve. Did it, you know, like Leif, I thought it was like a $10,000 check to get me by like the next couple of months. Didn't hear anything back. Called them. Finally got through. I was caller 937.
Mercy.
Like, so I heard that and I was like, great, this is going to be my 8-hour day.
Yeah.
And it was hours on the phone. And then I finally got somebody and she was like, oh, great. You know, everything's going to work out fine. Like, this is great. Like, everything looks good. Like, blah, blah, blah. And then she was like, you can expect to get the email. Leif, I haven't even gotten the email. And I was like, literally there. The second this thing opened, I was there because, you know, there's no way of telling how long this is going to last. I think it's going to last well into the summer, if not early fall. I think that's what we're looking at. I'm looking ahead and I'm just like, anyway. So even if I did get it, $1,000 isn't going to get me that far.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do with $1,000?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the thing too, is there's so much information out there that who knows what's real and what's not, you know? And so there's been really, really horrible spreading of this information, you know, by the powers that be. Unfortunately, it's just not clear. It's not clear, you know, to people who need it. So it's been unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think the things that are top of my mind are like, let's say like PPP does come through. When is that going to come through? Is that going to come through in like June? And am I already going to be in production at that point and it won't matter? What does that kind of mean in like a bigger sense? Like, what does that mean? I guess I'll just count it as profit, or I guess I'll just put it back into the emergency fund because I haven't been working for the last 2 months, which is like probably the reason why it exists, but it still feels super weird to be getting like all this money and it not be at the time when you actually need it. You know, like, I don't know. It's more just like random music. So I don't know.
Well, I was actually surprised that the stimulus came through when it, like in the middle of this, when people actually need it.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of curious where the focus has been, because for those PPP loans, I'm seeing a lot more of the larger entities get that money reserved for larger companies that will make more of a profit for those banks. So what is kind of there for the people who are, you know, mid to low day players? They don't have a business. They don't have a guild. They're not part of a union. So I don't know. I've been kind of thinking of those because those are the kinds of people that you guys hire, right?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a brief anecdote about one of my friends that I play tennis with. I've never really worked with him, but he's a like all-in-one video guy that like has his own like small camera and goes out and shoots stuff and like whatever. You know, he's probably about 10 years behind me in terms of age and career. And we were playing tennis and he's like, hey, what about all these like SBA things? And I was like telling him my experience and like what the process is and what the different ones mean and stuff. And he was like, whoa, that's crazy. And then he texted me a couple of days ago and he's like, hey, I just like looked into all this stuff and it looks like all of them are closed right now. And I was like, oh, dang, all right, you're probably right. Like, I think everything's like run out of money. And he's like, what do you think I should do next? Like, I heard like something about like, maybe I could get unemployment. And I was like, I honestly have no idea about unemployment, but you probably can. Like, you should Google it because I don't know. And he was like, okay. And then he like texted me back like a few minutes later and he's like, hey, so I just went on the state of Tennessee website and here's what it says. And he like sends me this screenshot that basically says like, you know, this part of our website is shut down for the day because we're too busy processing the applications that we've already received. Please check back later. And I was like, dude, I don't know. That sucks. That sucks really bad.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I think one of the biggest lessons out of all that, luckily I don't have to make these decisions, but there's going to be a lot of questioning about the processes that are supposedly in place, government wise, to be able to handle these kinds of things. Because we haven't dealt with this, at least in our lifetime. And so, now that this has happened, I think there's gonna be a lot of talk post this, about how it's all fallen apart and how we can fix it for future. Now, I don't know. We're all kind of in limbo on this.
You hope it's a once in a lifetime thing. But,
Hopefully.
for instance, I was thinking like post Great Depression, they had put policies in place to help it never happen again. So I'm curious what's going to be put in place this time. We're not the best at having these things in place where they run smoothly. So I don't know.
I mean, I think there's a really good chance that this could return in the fall.
For sure.
To what you were saying, Leif, like if I see something, I'm applying for it because I don't know how long this is going to last. So yeah, I'm applying for everything. I also don't know, there's like a moratorium on rent and there's like, all of these different bills, et cetera, et cetera. And so I know a lot of people, they're starting to pile up. Well, what happens, when we press play again and all of a sudden all of this is due? I don't know what that's going to mean for like the economy or home prices or like anything like that. And maybe I'm worrying about something that I shouldn't need to worry about, but I'm awfully glad that I did apply for that thing like the same day, even though I haven't gotten it yet. So
where do you guys go in order to find business loans that you could potentially apply for?
SBA.gov, right? That's where I've been getting stuff. I'm also like trying to get and Leif, maybe this is a conversation later. I want to, get in on these government contracts too. Like maybe at some point those will pick up. So I am spending the time like applying for or getting to know that whole process. I'm also like watching all of the White House thingies because maybe Trump will drop a hint. I don't know. Like, and it kind of gets me at least a little bit ahead of the curve. So if I listen to it, maybe it'll give me like a 3-hour head start. So yeah, I am watching all of the briefings because I have to,
It seems like information is not being passed down uniformly, or is it being like filtered? Like yes. I sort of feel like no matter what you think about Trump, like I think there's an awful amount of unfiltered information that comes directly from him and his tweets and his briefings. And like everybody else in the room is just as surprised as we are that those things are being said, whether they're good or bad. I think there's also a decent amount of like asymmetry. Like, so for example, like in the South, as of yesterday for Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, basically announced that the governors are going to start reopening. Like Tennessee's governor said that they are not going to reissue a shelter-in-place order after April 30. We're in kind of a weird position with one client that's done very well during this time period because all of their sales are online and it's all like essential items that need to like go out to people or deemed essential.
Nice.
And so they actually really badly want to shoot an ad that they can put on connected TV, and like tons of people are consuming that content right now. So I mean, like it's kind of like perfect timing, like whatever. They really badly want to shoot it, and they're kind of like, as soon as like things open up, let's shoot it. And so like it's a weird position for us because like right now we're potentially a week out from things officially opening up. But like, is it actually safe to shoot that? Should we be planning a production? Right. What does it mean when shelter in place goes away? And so the responsibility changes from here's what's okay to like, is this advisable, even if it's quote unquote okay? And like, I don't know how to answer those questions. Those are questions that we're just grappling with right now, like as of today.
To that effect, like as a business owner, what are you liable for? What is the liability? Like if somebody gets sick on your set, is that your responsibility? Or do people sign disclosures? Like there's coronavirus out here. If I get it on your set or if somebody transmits something, I'm not going to sue you.
Would that be under production insurance?
So I've been reading a lot about that because I'm interested in that as well. And on the film side of things, what I've been, because they're all grappling with this too, what I'm reading, which makes a lot of sense, is that insurance companies are not going to want to touch this. Because, how in the world are they supposed to predict what's going to happen and what's not going to happen? It would be terrible for them. So I think it is going to be a waiver kind of situation where you just, at some point you have to work and you're just going to hope for the best.
Well,
I think that's what the film industry is going to do.
A lot of people are wanting to work. They're needing to work, and they're willing to kind of put themselves in that situation if it's something that they're willing to risk.
Right.
What makes it a little bit difficult is, of course, the ethics of putting together that production.
Absolutely. I don't know what you guys think. I haven't pursued any work over the last, month and a half or so. And I just, for me, it was taking a little breather. And also I didn't want to bombard agencies or, clients that I've had in the past during this time. I didn't think that it was, I don't know if I didn't think it was appropriate necessarily, but I just didn't think it was the best time. It may be a bad look for me to go after them right now. I don't know if that's the case with everybody, but I've kind of waited, and I'm waiting to see how things go in the next month to start reaching out again. But I don't know if it's a bad idea to take a moment though and wait to see where things go. I don't know. I could be wrong.
But what about the people who don't necessarily have that luxury?
No, for sure. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of people that need to keep going. But, those of us that are pitching projects or are, working through agencies and have those relationships, you'd hate to burn bridges in this moment, I guess.
I mean, I haven't had anybody be like, how dare you email me? Like, right. I haven't had anybody do that yet. And it hasn't been the kind of thing. I mean, it's just like, hey, I have this, it costs this much, to make. Are you interested in it? Do you need content? Do you need something right now? And I mean, the channels are different, and I'm definitely hustling, absolutely. But all of the Instagram sponsored ads, like all of those Facebook ads, like people are still needing that branded content, and people know that
the
people
content
are
is still there.
More than,
the need is very much still there.
They're looking at this stuff. Their business model is changing or shifting, and they do have things that they want to tell people. So none of that has changed because people are watching content still. I mean, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Shameless. I know.
The issue that I find, majority of my work is somewhere other than where I am. So I'm on planes all the time. I travel 100,000 miles a year. So I don't know what that's going to look like. And that's something that I'm questioning right now, is the travel aspect.
That is big.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably get from A to B pretty cheap.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably safer flying right now than you are any other time.
That's probably true.
Who knows what it's going to be like in a month when people start traveling again, right?
Exactly.
Or 2 months or whatever. But I would be really curious, of your guys' opinions about what the right approach is to jumping back into production quickly, because I think, at least on my end, I am pretty certain that we're going to have at least one client wanting us to be in production on May 2. So
sure.
I've heard a lot of different things from different producers. Like some people that own studios work with a lot of different producers, and what they're doing is staying on unemployment as long as they possibly can. And this is probably, like you were saying, it's staggered. It's different areas. So in LA, people are going to stay on there as long as possible because there's so little that's coming in. And it's really crappy to come off of unemployment where you're getting 600 plus per week. It's something that's secure. You can at least get food once you come off of it, and you can guarantee one job a month. So it's sort of this chicken and the egg thing where it's you have this slinky of backlog, but you don't know when it's going to come in. And, if there's nobody to work, how do you work? And if there's work, how do you work? It's this back and forth. So that's one issue, is just a lot of producers are very, very unwilling to bring in their crews and bring in people and take them off unemployment when they cannot guarantee a job, more than one job.
But what about those that aren't under that? Like, there are a lot of day players who are non-union. They're not on unemployment because that's a whole other mess. So what do you do ethically as a producer to put together these potential shoots? The restrictions are lifted. People aren't on unemployment. You wouldn't be interrupting anything, but would you move forward with production?
I think this is it's going to be the time for the one-man band to four-man band approach over the next year. That's my guess. And, we're all guessing here, even the people that are a few pay stubs higher than we are guessing as well. So we can't really know what's going to happen the next few months. But my guesstimate is that those that can pull off productions with small crews like that are going to do quite well. Because the large companies, that work through the agency work that we get with those large companies, they all are going to do okay, and they're still fine. Sure, they may have lost some money, but it's not like the mom and pop shop down the road. And so those people are going to want to get commercial content out there. Anything larger than that, though, I don't think we're going to see for the next 12 to 18 months. That's my guesstimate, and I could be completely wrong. Who knows?
I think it's an interesting scenario because Atlanta is a huge production hub for all kinds of film and television and commercial and everything else. And they're going to be opened up in a week, according to their government.
I don't think shows will be, though. I really don't. I don't think large productions like that will be. I could be completely wrong. The largest commercial I've had in the last couple of months was early January. It was a NASCAR commercial that I did in Charlotte. And, we had 30 plus people on set, crew and cast and the whole thing. And I don't see that coming back for quite a while. I really don't, because I don't think even companies or agencies are going to be willing to let that amount of people in a space at once. But I think that if you have a team of people or, freelancers that can come together that have done the, wearing of 5 hats and can do that well, I think that's when, those groups of people are going to be able to shine starting sometime this summer, or even earlier, potentially.
Yeah, seriously, who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you know how it goes. I mean,
yeah, please do.
We'll definitely be feeling a little bit of pressure to mount a traditional production. So
right.
Yeah.
I mean, what an experience. That's an awesome behind the scenes. It really is.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. We should do it for the sake of for the sake of history or something.
Posterity. Yeah, absolutely.
You can be in your whole garb,
Well,
that's great.
I mean, that's actually a good transition because I am wanting to look at the potential benefits of re-entering the market. What kind of positives you guys see on the horizon because of this? Are there any?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think, to what Bryan was saying, the 1 to 4, small kind of crew might, I think it's having a moment. I think people are figuring out what's engaging. Is that changing? Are smaller productions being appreciated? Are they carrying their weight? I think a lot of that is getting adjusted. 30-person plus crews and stuff like that. I mean, I would like to think that there's always going to be a place and people will appreciate production value, because it would be a shame to lose that. But yeah, I think the 1 to 4 crew, like you were saying, Bryan, I think it's going to have a moment in the sun. And for those of us who have learned those skills or have had to learn those skills, being an editor, being able to pull together a crew and know people who are multifunctional in that way, it may wind up being a real benefit to have those skills.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I don't think that, big production and quality production is going to go away. I mean, we've conditioned people over the last 10 to 15 years to demand a certain quality. I don't think companies at a certain level are ever going to get rid of that level of quality. I think it'll always be there. Eventually, people are going to go back to the way things were. But you're right. I do think the smaller crews will have a moment. I think it's good for all of us to keep an eye on technology, because in this moment of craziness, people have used Instagram Live and all kinds of things that maybe you didn't use on your day-to-day basis, and definitely big corporations weren't using like they are now. And so there's been a moment where they've realized the potential, and I think that there might be some interesting future possibilities with that technology and where that goes, and to be on the forefront of that would be important.
Yeah, I think that this will provide a lot more, not just opportunities, but a lot more jobs, but in different ways, in different horizons. For instance, I was actually talking to David, and he has done a lot of work on Panoply, because he had to switch a lot of things to online learning. And, the way that he was able to set everything up through his cameras, this would drastically reduce the amount of people on set. This could be a thing. We would be getting rid of some jobs, but just like you were saying before with Instagram Live and everything, there's going to be a lot more demand for content on different spaces that we weren't necessarily expecting. There will be changes in the horizon, like whether or not it is production companies realizing that they can get away with a lower standard of production quality while the other ones still go, commercial wise too. Stock footage is a thing, and companies realize that they can get a product for a much lower price. So I don't know, there are things to keep in mind there.
My personal opinion is that the fallout of what's happening right now is going to have a very short tail, because it hasn't happened for very long. So it's very intense and painful in the moment. But if you can hunker down and continue with your long-term thinking, whatever that is, with your career or with your education or with your future plans for your business, I think in about 3 months' time, if things continue as they are right now, in about 3 months' time, things will probably start snapping back to where they were before. Things will probably start coming back around. And in about a year's time, you'll probably be really thankful that you held the course. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, to second that, I would agree. I think that if you can hold out as long as you possibly can, or even if you need to take a job in interim, there's going to be a point where this all turns around, and I don't think it's not going to be super long down the line. And if you can hold out as long as you can till that, and make it through as a business owner for those that own businesses, then you're going to be better for it, because there are a lot of people that are not going to be able to make it, unfortunately. So it kind of, and it sounds bad to say it this way, but it kind of levels the playing field a little bit. So yeah, if you can hold out as long as possible, and those that are entering the industry, I think about those that are graduating or those that have newly try to start in the industry. I don't think it's bad to take a moment to make a paycheck. Do what you need to do to make it, but don't lose sight of your ultimate goal. Don't lose sight of your passion and your dreams, because there's a lot of people that once they get settled somewhere, then they stay there and they don't ever accomplish what they want to accomplish. So don't lose sight of that when the time comes that things do reopen, and there is a lot of work out there, because there will be.
Yeah, there is no shame in providing for yourself, for sure.
Absolutely.
I think the state of the world right now is a giant jigsaw puzzle, and whoever can solve the puzzle first is bound to make a lot of cash. So I know myself, I have not consumed a drop of less content as before. In fact, I probably doubled my screen time, just because I'm constantly doom scrolling, trying to figure out what's going on. So
Doom scrolling.
Leif, you were saying the people in your network, the clients that you have, are very, very eager to communicate to their customers. They want to do it. I think that there's a lot of potential there. And so, if you can do it quicker, stronger, faster, I mean, I think you're bound to really cut out a lot of bigger businesses. It may be a good 3 months for you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this interview, follow us right here and check out more episodes at collabinc.org. If you have comments or know someone who would be a great guest on our show, send in your suggestions to Tanya at collabinc.org. And again, we're really wanting feedback, so go to media.collabinc.org, fill out the feedback survey, and you'll be entered to win a $25 Amazon gift card. You guys, thank you again so much for your time. We will see you next time on There to Hear.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.